While we continue to wait on the outcome of the final two scholarships for the upcoming basketball season, there's no reason we can't look ahead to the class of 2025, where Coach Hubert Davis has recently extended his fourth offer.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, it's Tuesday, May 9th, 2023. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isiah Schade, and I really want to thank you for locking in with us today, especially you everydayers. So glad that you're here with us day after day after day. It's so fun to get to talk Carolina things together. Coming up on today's show, we've got some update for you on Will Shaver's movement, the search also for front court depth for the Tar Heels for this year. A trio of Tar Heel commits is going to be playing in the same event together later this week, and the cautionary tale of Bob Huggins. Yikes. All of that coming up. But first, we want to get into talking about Caleb Wilson, who is the most recent class of 2025 player that Coach Davis has extended a scholarship offer to. Just to catch you up quickly, there are three others prior to him, two shooting guards and another power forward. Caleb Wilson himself is a power forward. It's Darryn Peterson and Isiah Harwell. They are the shooting guards. And then Koa Peat is the other power forward. All four of these guys are 5 stars. They're just studs at the top of their class. And so right now you're just trying to get scholarship offers out there to guys you think fit your program at the top end of the elite players in the class. So to that point, Caleb Wilson is the guy we're talking about today. His rankings all, elite level, 8th at Rivals, 7th at ESPN. Lowest I've seen is 13th at On3. He's 9th at 247 Sports, 8th at the 247 Sports Composite. So really just kind of right there at a top 10 guy. But he is newly just shooting up the rankings. And so I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see him continue to move in that direction. Class of 2025, by the way, is young men just finishing their sophomore year right now. Now, in terms of like official conversations and phone calls and stuff, coaches are able to do that on June 15th ahead of a student athlete's junior season. And so Coach Davis will officially be able to make those calls coming up in just about a month from now to Caleb Wilson. So Wilson is 6'9", 205. He's a power forward from the Atlanta area. Goes to Holy Innocents Episcopal School, HIES, Highs. That's up. If you are with us all the time, you know that I grew up in the Atlanta area on the south side. But Holy Innocents is up on the north side of town, just inside the 285 perimeter, which is the big perimeter around Atlanta there. If you've ever been to a Braves game at the new park at Truist, it's just 4 or 5 miles kind of northeast of Truist Park on 285. So very close there to where the Braves play. Not the old one, not Turner Field, not Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, the new one up on the north side. So Caleb Wilson made this offer public on Thursday, just kind of put it out last week on his social media channels. Again, he has ascended and developed really quickly, and it's just neat to watch how that can happen for a young man or a young woman as they really start to develop in their game, whatever it may be. In this case, it is college basketball. You love to see Coach Davis going after power forwards at the elite level, like Wilson, like Koa Peat, for example. And it will continue to show. Just continue to keep your eye on the recruiting, because it's going to say a lot about what Coach Davis is trying to do with the roster, what kind of guys he's looking to get, what skill sets they have. So to that point, let's talk about Caleb Wilson's skill set, because you want to know what will he be able to offer and bring to the Tar Heels. Well, something that really struck my attention was something that Jamie Shaw said about him on Twitter. If you know Jamie Shaw, he's with On3 and part of that whole universe with Joe Tipton and others, really dialed in to what's going on in recruiting. And he mentioned on Twitter how impressed he is at Wilson's development, basically in terms of his ability to create his own shot via the dribble in the half court. And so I, went through and watched quite a few highlights of Wilson of things I could find. And I found that to be true. He's really, especially if you watch some of the footage from this recent EYBL stuff I believe it was in Phoenix pretty recently, and really capable ball handler at 6'9", smooth, able to some nice step backs, side steps, other things to create space for himself and get off a mid-range shot. Obviously, as we know, that's one of the least effective shots in basketball. You want to get to the rim or be able to shoot from deep, but just it's good to know that he's got that in his bag as well. And so this is the exact type of skill set that I think Coach Davis is looking for in a power forward, in a four, to be able to play that role really well. And of course, as you expect, speaking of EYBL, this young man, as he's blown up, has all sorts of offers at EYBL, all sorts of people watching him. Coach Frederick was there, obviously, for North Carolina. But Bruce Pearl's there watching him. John Shire from Duke, several Duke assistants like Emil Jefferson, Chris Carrawell, Coach Cowell from Kentucky watched him at some point. And so basically it's as you would expect. If Carolina is going to get Caleb Wilson, they're going to have to beat out all the dudes, all the other blue blood kind of schools. Now, a couple other things that I see with Wilson that I like watching his footage. Is able to get the ball, even as a four, get out and run the break, get the transition going. But what's interesting, yes, he will finish at the rim as needed, but is a very capable passer when he's leading the break. I love that. I mean, that's a 6'9" dude running the floor smoothly, I might add, doesn't look like a gangling, awkward horse, right? No, he's getting out and running. And but was finding teammates in transition with not just here you go, chest pass, some nice bounce passes and other things. And so that is encouraging to me. But beyond that, beyond his ability to do it, is his willingness to do it. And that's something you don't always see. And I think part of that speaks to what he's grown into, who he's growing into as somebody that hasn't just been sitting up at the top of the rankings forever. And so that's encouraging. Speaking of smoothness, his shot, it looks good. It's smooth. He's smooth with his movements. That's kind of what you're looking for. Is he somebody that looks like he might be able to get out and defend in space a little bit on the defensive end? Something else I like about Caleb Wilson is that he's been working on his shooting, because he knows that in order to get to the next level, and the next level, meaning the high D1 college playing, and then beyond that to the professional ranks, he's got to be able to shoot, got to be able to hit the corner three, got to be able to hit the wing three, whatever it may be. And it's clear that he's been working on that. Watching some of his EYBL footage, he is able to hit that shot, but I love that he's got a quick trigger on it. And I don't mean that in a ball hogging quick trigger sort of way. I mean it in a, as we talked about a lot with Brady Manek sort of way, just able to have a quick release, gets his shot off quickly. And so that's a really good thing. Something else that stood out to me beyond just his play is I listened to an interview with him at a recent USA Basketball Junior kind of mini camp just from a couple weeks ago. And something that really stood out to me and impressed me about Caleb Wilson. He talked about that it was just his second day there. The first day where there was a lot of jitters, a lot of nerves, and understandably so. He has just ascended to all this, and he's just getting his feet wet. He's getting his bearings, any of those phrases that you want to use, finding his way. But what he talked about is said, I'm here for my second day. Yesterday there was the nerves. I'm getting settled in, and now I just want to focus on playing the right way. Rebounding, running the floor, blocking shots. Just want to focus on playing the right way. He reiterated that again. Let me go back and look at that again. Playing the right way, scoring. No, he said rebounding and running the floor and blocking shots. Here's what I love about that. He is highly capable of putting the ball in the basket. Caleb Wilson is. If you've watched his footage, you can see it and you know it and you realize that it's true. But he didn't even list that in these 3 things that he's trying to do to play the right way at a mini camp where it's all about trying to score as many points as you can and get noticed that way. Caleb Wilson said, yeah, I'm going to get mine, but I want to get noticed in other ways, because he went on to say, hey, look, this is my first opportunity on this stage, and I'm really focused on being an all-around player, not just being somebody that people are watching because I'm able to score, but somebody that, as he said, is rebounding, is running the floor, blocking shots, doing all the little things, sharing the ball, etc. And I love that. In that same interview, he was asked what do you look like when you're at your best? And he said, it's when I'm making good decisions with the ball in my hand. That is mature. Remember, this kid is just like right now working on finishing his sophomore year of high school. And so he's looking to feed his team. That's his goal, what he wants to do. And so, man, would cherish a power forward like that could come in, score, but also be a true point forward, kind of similar to what we're hoping Harrison Ingram to be this upcoming season. Can rebound, can block shots. A lot of the block shots I've seen from him, now granted, a lot of it was highlights, but is doing a good job knocking block shots off the backboard to try and save possession. That's something you're watching. I'm always watching for with shot blockers. At what level do you keep the ball in play for hopefully your team to be able to get it? So, Caleb Wilson, love his game, love his attitude, love his approach, love that he's been working hard on his 3-point shot. And here's an interesting thing. Two final things I want to say about him right now. Number one, you might remember Jabari Smith from Auburn recently. That's Walker Kessler transferred there, and then the two of them played together. And then Jabari Smith was a high lottery pick in last year's 2022 NBA draft. There are some comps between these two guys, between Jabari Smith and Caleb Wilson. And so as he continues to grow, as he continues to find his shot and find his game and to be able to create for himself, those Jabari Smith comps are only going to grow. And if so, boy, I loved Jabari Smith, and I would love to have Mr. Wilson in a Carolina uniform. And what I love finally about him is this. He is very humble, as you've seen, trying to share the ball, trying to find the best way to play and do all those things. But at the end of the day, he's doing those because he said, I want to be better than him and him and him. Didn't name names, but just basically like, my goal is to be the best. Yes, to prove it and to be the best, but just because I want to be really good at basketball. And you love to see it. Hopefully Carolina can continue to make waves with him. And then as the recruiting is officially allowed as we get into mid-June, then we'll continue to see how that goes. Well, coming up, Will Shaver, as you might have heard, has decommitted from his commitment to Belmont after leaving North Carolina. Been asked a lot about what's next for Will Shaver as Carolina's kind of looking for some backcourt depth. Well, I've got an update for you on that, and we'll talk about it in just a second. But first, I need to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, where LeBron and the Lakers, thanks to Lonnie Walker, are now up 3-1 on the Warriors. Still trying to figure out why Steph Curry didn't call a timeout. Anyway, right now, new customers can get that no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's right, $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. They got great promotions every day, a simple app that's safe, secure, and easy to use, and you can get paid instantly at FanDuel. Why wouldn't you get on it? Maybe you got the Lakers. Maybe you got the Warriors coming back. That'd probably be some good money right now. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's lockedon.com. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn all about it. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thanks so much, folks, for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listen or watch every single day. You everydayers, make sure you tune in again tomorrow. Coach Pat Kilby will be with me as he always is on Wednesday. You know it's going to be a great conversation. All right, the next conversation is about Will Shaver, and this becomes a bigger conversation, but I want to start it with him. So I mentioned on yesterday's show, for those of you who were with us, if not, go back and listen or watch. That'd be awesome. But that Will Shaver had transferred out of North Carolina and had committed to Belmont there in Nashville, a great school, and was going to hopefully have some opportunities there. Well, then we learned recently that Will is actually backing off of that commitment. And so there's a lot of speculation of, hey, North Carolina hasn't really had any other movement in the front court. Is Will Shaver backing off of that commitment because maybe there's a chance he's coming back to UNC? That's a question I was asked some version of a lot later in the weekend and on Monday. Now, here's the thing. You can see a lot of logic to this with UNC needing, in my opinion, more front court depth, more backup minutes. And we'll talk about why in just a second. And so, yes, I can see the logic in it, but here's the deal. The answer is no. Will Shaver is not coming back to North Carolina. Now, he has not yet publicly said where he is going instead. And so I'm not going to do that because that's his story to tell. But I do feel comfortable, and I don't mind saying that from a source. I know that Will Shaver will not be coming back to North Carolina. So still 2 scholarships out there to look for. And so we'll be excited to hear for Will Shaver where his next landing spot actually is, and I'll celebrate that with him. But in the meantime, I can tell you that he will not be a Tar Heel next season. That said, though, I still think Carolina needs front court help. Right now, it's Mondo, it's Jalen Washington, it's Zayden High coming in, and then obviously Jalen Withers coming from Louisville as well. To me, unless Coach Davis is going all in on small ball, that 4-person front court just really isn't enough. Part of that is because of history. Armando has had several injury things throughout his Carolina career, nothing major, and he's a stud to play through it. But there are times when he's been forced to miss a game or two or be limited here or there because of injuries sustained. Now, you are hopeful that that doesn't happen in this upcoming season, but history would suggest that it probably is going to be a thing at some point. Secondly, Jalen Washington has an injury history where, with ACL and having to go in and fix that initial surgery and things like that. And so hopefully Carolina's putting a lot of minutes on his legs this year because would love to see him get a lot of run. But the question becomes, does anything crop up with that? Zayden High is a young pup who comes in, and I'm hopeful that he'll get a couple minutes, but I think he is more of a guy who will be getting a lot more rotation time in his second and third year. And so that said, there's just not much depth. I mean, Jalen Withers is coming into the program for the first time. And so as I look at it right now, my expectation is that Jalen Withers will start at the 4 and Armando will start at the 5. But again, that's where it stands today, with a Jalen Washington behind probably Armando and with a Zayden High probably behind Jalen Withers. I would just feel so much more comfortable with a 5th. But who you getting? As we've talked so much about in the transfer portal, guys, unless you just get the right guy, nobody's going to want to come to be a backup or even a third stringer. And so you almost have to look at, can we convince somebody to come be a backup? Or is there still a 4 out there that's talented enough, that fits Carolina's scheme enough, that would replace Jalen Withers? Keep in mind, the transfer portal is closing on Thursday at midnight Eastern, right? And so not much more time for people to pop in to that portal. maybe Carolina is planning to go pretty heavily into small ball this year. And so in which case, is it somebody that can come in and contend with Harrison Ingram and these other guys? I just don't know at this point. But right now, it's not Will Shaver. And you've just got a couple question marks by the roster. Obviously, you get Mondo back, and that's big time. And you hope again that he is healthy, but we're going to have to wait and see. So we'll keep our eyes peeled on all of these things. Coming up, we need to talk about a trio of Tar Heel commits who are going to be playing together at an event later this week in the New York City area. Going to be exciting stuff. And Bob Huggins stuck his foot in his mouth in a big way on Monday, opposite end of the week. We need to talk about that. I know it's not Carolina specific, but it does bring up some things that need to be discussed. We'll talk about all that in just a second. Okay, coming up on Thursday of this week is the Aces Elite Classic in New York City, specifically in the Bronx, if you're wondering about which borough. This is 16 young men and 16 young women. There's a guys and women's game to compete in this classic. The cool thing is 3 of those 16 are Tar Heels. Incoming freshman Simeon Wilcher, whose last name was spelled wrong. It was just Witcher, no L on one of the things I saw from Aces. So that's not a great look. But also Elliot Cadeau, which I know we need to continue to talk about that, and Ian Jackson. So all 3 of these guys are going to be playing together. Ian Jackson and Simeon Wilcher, obviously both from up in the New York City area. And so they need to take Cadeau under their wing and say, here's New York City, young man. And so that'll be fun. But again, that's on coming up later this week. I believe it is Wednesday. I might have said Thursday just a minute ago. Wednesday, May 10th. The fellas game is at 8 Eastern time. And I just love this opportunity to see these 3 young men playing together who might or might not be together on the court in Chapel Hill, depending on one and done things and who comes and who reclassifies, who doesn't. All of that stuff just remains to be seen. And so never has roster been in such flux as it is due to all of the circumstances of college basketball around us right now. But that's why I'm here, to help keep you up to date with all of it. So excited to see what comes out of this. Excited to see the opportunity for these 3 young men to play together. As of the time of this recording, the actual rosters haven't been released of who's going to play with who. And so, just by simple math, at least 2 of them have to be on the same team, but we shall see. Finally today, Bob Huggins, head coach of West Virginia, one of the winningest coaches in Division I history ever, was at Cincinnati for a long time and other places, but really stuck his foot in his mouth on a radio show early in the week when talking about some Xavier fans. I'm not going to repeat what he said. You can go find it if you want to, other than that you should know that it was something that shouldn't be said, and it was repeated. And from the mouth of a coach who is at the tip top of our sport, I know that West Virginia itself isn't like the school you look at. It's like, oh, tip top of college basketball. But he is, as a long time coach, a very successful head coach. It's unacceptable and something we can't do. Now, obviously, they put out a statement, and then West Virginia put out a statement that they're reviewing it and blah, blah, blah. As of the time of this recording, not sure what's going to come of all of that, whatever. You have to be, when you are under this type of microscope, so shrewd and so wise with every syllable you utter out of your mouth. It's just, you are not going to get away with anything, particularly in this day and age where everything's digitized, everything's able to be played back and recorded, that you just have to watch what you say. I'm learning this myself. The further and further I get into my podcast hosting career, with hosting these 2 shows every week, Locked on Tar Heels and the Locked on College Basketball show that I host, where if you're a big college basketball fan and you're not dialed in on that, go hop on the train with us. We're having a blast. But the things you say are dissected The things you say, you choose not to say are dissected too. Like, hey, why didn't you speak out about, any of these kind of things? It's just the nature of what you do. And so because of that, you just have to be so careful. But here's the other thing. If you have gone and listened to this right around 2-minute clip of Coach Huggins, one of the things that made me even more sad is that the hosts of this show, when Coach Huggins said what he said, their immediate response was to like applaud him and, oh, what a great guy. And I forget the exact what they said, but I was just like, no, that cannot be the response to that. And so it was disappointed in these hosts as well. So forgiveness is absolutely a thing. When you speak as much as someone like him does, you're going to say the wrong thing sometimes. But there's a difference between the wrong thing and just something that you can't say, which was the case here. And so there's obviously forgiveness, but there has to be consequences for our mess ups in life. And Coach Huggins said in his statement that he would own whatever those consequences are. But that is very much a reality. And so one of the things that it is just a healthy reminder to me of is the trust that we have earned, you and I, between each other, where my goal is to uphold that trust with this community here on Locked On Tar Heels that we are developing all around us. I love it and it's great, but it means that you are trusting in me and that I'm trusting in you and that we're all in this together. And so I want to always do my best at that, but to recognize that there are going to be times when, hopefully I don't say things of this magnitude, but just things that are wrong or things that you might disagree with. And if so, I think it's good to be able to have healthy discourse and healthy dialogue where if I just say something that's false or wrong, where I'm able to come back and apologize and say, hey, I'm sorry, I missed this one. Or where if it's just something you disagree with, let's have a conversation about it. I think that's what humanity is about. And I don't want to be part of a community where we just hide behind computer screens. I want to be part of something that's real and developing and growing, even if it is digital. You know what I mean? And so if that's something you want to be a part of, let's do that together and just make this something that can be really fun for all of us. Friends, that's it for today's episode of Locked On Tar Heels. Thanks so much for coming and checking things out. Really interesting to look at Caleb Wilson along with these other 4 guys that Carolina has offered in the class of 25 so far. If you would, go leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you find the opportunity to give reviews. I want to give a big word of thanks to a couple recent reviews, Terrell Joy, and then also Jacob Cadeau, who I believe, from what he said, lives just like an hour east of me in Springfield, Missouri, and became a Tar Heels fan because of Tyler Hansbrough, who grew up in Poplar Bluff, Missouri, kind of another 3-4 hours to the east of there. And so really neat. Jacob, thanks for checking in with that. Again, want to thank to all of you, especially you everydayers, for diving in with us and making it a great show again today. You can follow us on Twitter at Locked On Heels. Follow me at Isaac Schade. You can email the show, lockedontarheels@gmail.com. Taking in questions right now. We got a mailbag episode coming up very soon. Don't forget to subscribe, smash that like button, and leave comments on today's show. I want to remind you that it is always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.